He wasn't there anymore.
That's
He was an interesting fellow.
He was there.
I think so.
Welcome, everyone. The January 2020 City Council meeting is now in session. Hope everyone had a fruitful, happy New Year and great holiday season. We're going to kick things off with just a slight change in the agenda. The discussion on land use fees is going to continue, but the discussion on building fees, staff wants to clarify a few things prior to our discussion. Would that work for everyone?
Yes, fine with me.
Does that mean take it off the agenda for
Yeah.
tonight?
Can we take it off
Table.
the agenda?
And then
Table?
and recycle your packet on that one. Just get rid of it. We're gonna get you a new one with some better labels and some better visuals.
So we just want to get all the information 100% updated and, okay, sounds good. Does anyone have a declaration of a conflict of interest?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Let's move on to the approval of minutes from the regular meeting, December 4th, 2019 City Council meeting.
Motion to approve?
Okay, motion to approve on the table from,
No.
Absolutely no.
what's that?
Oh, third paragraph down where it goes, Mayor Brown attended Cedar Board meeting where the 3 Seaside School District principals, because there's only one superintendent, it has to be principals, gave an update. And I checked with every school person and there's one in training, so there would be 2 superintendents possibly, but if there's 3, it's gotta be the principals. So who were they?
So the misprint is Seaside.
Superintendent.
No, the superintendent's fine. It's the Seaside School District. So what I stated was that the 3 superintendents from the 3 different school districts were in attendance at the Cedar meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's just a misprint.
all right. I'm sorry,
But that's good that we fixed that. So it would have been the Astoria School District, the Warrenton School District, and then the Seaside School District.
Okay.
So that's the change that we would want to see.
Since I wasn't there, I didn't know.
So just get rid of the word 3.
Seaside School, Seaside School.
Yeah, I think I might have said like the 3 local district superintendents.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Good catch.
Motion to approve as amended?
Do we hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Okay, so that was a motion by Polina and seconded by Carrie and Dan. You were the one. I'm just doing that for, Christy is here subbing for Gail. So
Yes.
I'm just clarifying a few things for the recording.
And
Okay.
good to have you here, Christy.
Thanks.
Thanks for filling in. Next up, we have Planning Commission report. Do we have a Planning Commission
I
report?
didn't see
No.
one.
They canceled last month's, didn't they? And they canceled this month's?
Correct.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
Okay, so nothing to discuss there. Mayor's report. Chad's actually got a bunch of news to report, so I'm going to kind of defer to him on most of that. But I do just want to say it's a new year. Let's all make a resolution to work well together and treat each other with respect online and in person, and try to work together to get some great things accomplished. We've got a fire station on the agenda and lots of work to do. So I think this is going to be a good year for Earhart if we all work together. And with that, I would like to move on to the councilors' reports, and we'll start with Councilor Packel.
I have nothing to report.
All right, Councilor Jessup.
I have nothing.
nothing.
All right, Councilor Cockrell.
Yeah, I think by next month, I would say, Chad and I have been working on a new set of, like an employee handbook, if you will. That's going to update all of the personnel and hiring policies from a long time ago. So we've had several meetings on that and are like on our 3rd draft or so, getting close to being done.
Thank you for your volunteerism on that.
Yeah, and next we will be looking at job descriptions and hopefully tying job descriptions into an evaluation tool. The staff really don't have an evaluation tool at this point in time. And then we have one that we've used a couple times for the city administrator. Maybe I've heard that it's a little too complex, so we're gonna simplify that and use the job description as the basis for those as we move along on all of that. So that will be coming down the pike in probably a few more months. And we have discussed doing an eval on Chad ahead of the budget process this year. And that should be done annually, we missed it last year. CERT group, I wasn't at the last meeting, but we're continuing to hone in our skills on ham radio. And also city staff is working on the personal cash program that will be up in the connexes. And so that we hope to get off the ground in the spring, I'd say probably. Ish.
That's, yeah, probably be earlier than that, with the way things are going.
That's all I have.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. And great work on the employee handbook stuff. Got to look at a little bit of it in the organizational chart, and it's gonna really help. Okay, next up we have city officers' reports. Got a police report in there. City treasurer, I think that we don't have anything to add. Christie?
She didn't leave anything.
City attorney, excuse me.
We did get a letter from an attorney regarding maintenance of a pedestrian path in between two streets. We've tendered that to our insurance carrier so that they can look at it and write up a report. And just so you know, there is what is described, so both a street and a utility easement that connects two streets were turned over to the city in May of 1974. They've been continuously used by the public as a pedestrian path since that time.
Between Pfeiffer and Summit.
Between Pfeiffer and Summit, and the city has provided maintenance on an as-needed basis. It gets enough foot traffic that there hasn't been a huge amount of maintenance that's been necessary, but it's happened from time to time. And pedestrians were walking outside, some pedestrians were walking outside of that easement and onto it and adjacent property owners' properties. So what we did was gravelled it so it's quite clear what portion is the easement for the public and then what portion is not. And so one of the landowners, the language on the deed says that it's for the use of the public, but I'm not quite sure what their analysis is, but I think that because they didn't describe it, but that they've said, well, that you shouldn't have put essentially that we should not have maintained the path. So again, this is something that's been going on for 46 years, and but things can get complicated, so we'll see what happens. But we've tendered it to the insurance. Their preliminary analysis was the same as ours, and that they weren't quite sure, why we got the letter. They read the deed in the same way, but they're going to do the report, so we'll see.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
Not about that one.
Okay.
I
Just
do have a,
where was the butterfly bush in relation that got taken out? I guess there was a big butterfly bush there.
It was about first quarter way in. It was one of the reasons that the people were walking
Around.
because of the way that was growing out. Yeah.
But this particular property owner is not that one that got affected by people walking around.
No, that was another property owner that wanted to know if the city would do anything to help
Yeah.
give him some relief to stop people from walking on his property. And so we cleaned it up a little bit. And we did our research, had a survey, did the deed research to make sure that we were legally able to do this. And we thought that it was a good idea. Then we cleaned it up by defining the path making it out of gravel, nothing too big, putting some rocks out to prevent people from driving on it, and added a dog puppy paper station because it was really covered in dog feces over there. Somebody, so it's a little bit nicer. But this newer owner of this home, I think he's lived there for a couple of years, just doesn't, we're not sure the angle that he's coming from. So we'll let you know more as we know more.
Any other questions for Peter on anything else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Peter, I got just a clarification for myself for something that I'm working on. It's an Oregon statute
Okay.
is a law, right?
Yeah.
And the revised statute is just a revision of this existing statute that is on the books as a law.
Right, so every legislative session, if new laws are passed, whether it's amending existing laws or putting in new ones, then those statutes are revised, and it's the most recent year. So if you go to a library and see we call them ORSs, so organized statutes, they'll have a date on them, and so it's just important to make sure that you're looking at the most recent statutes.
And so what is an administrative rule? Is it something like a law, or is it something that they say, well, maybe you should follow this, but it doesn't really matter to us?
So the way that administrative rules are normally used is that the statute will have a broader brush purpose, and then a administrative agency will flesh that out in terms of a more detailed description. The example I'll give is one I looked at earlier this week for another jurisdiction. The legislature recently passed a law that would allow two cities, one with more than 25,000 people and one with less, to bring in an area of not more than 50 acres for affordable housing, and that affordable housing would need to be affordable housing for 50 years. And so basically, and it was restricted to certain counties. I don't think Clatsop County was one of them, but so essentially that's what the bill said. And so then when it went to DLCD, which is the Department of Land Conservation Development, they were then responsible for coming up with all the criteria of, if you want to apply for this, this is the type of information that you'll need to provide. These are the deadlines you'll need to apply, and these are the factors that we'll look at in deciding who essentially wins. And so you can, if you read the statute, you see kind of the broad brushstrokes of that there is this program, it will be available to two communities, etc. If you get into the OARs, then it provides all of that detail, so that if you were to choose to apply, you would know exactly what they needed to see versus what they didn't, and also what they were going to consider when making their decision.
Okay, and so is it highlighted in the ORS or in the statutes that you got to go to the administrative, or you just read it and it's so broad that you go, oh, well, we got to go look in the administrative rules?
Yeah, it gets confusing because the ORSs don't refer to the OARs, so you would not necessarily know that there are administrative guidance on the statute, and there's not necessarily an OAR on every statute. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So look both places, really. If there's a subject that you're looking into, look in both.
Yeah, see if there's particularly around land use issues, there are a lot of OARs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you very
are
much.
they online then? Correct.
Yeah. So both are available online.
And you can search it by keyword?
Yeah, but the OARs it's difficult to search the OARs by you have to be in the right chapter of the OAR to search it by keyword.
All right.
So one of the ways that would probably best allow you to get at it is if you type in the OAR and then type some of the language directly from the statute, and that will probably get you to the right neighborhood at least.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Peter? All right, next up we have our staff report from the city administrator, Chad Sweet.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. The fire chief want to let you know that he just doesn't have access to the data when Josh is gone on vacation. So his year-end report will be coming to you here soon, probably next month. Lots has been going on in the city here over the holidays and before and after. Duncan's Crossing, all of our permits now have been approved. We have gone through an archaeological subsurface test to make sure there was nothing in the ground that might be worth noting, and there was nothing found. So the final report is being prepared, and then once we receive that, we'll actually be able to finish all the permits and move forward. I think, Dan, have you taken a look at the plans that I had? And so is Russ Taggart. He's looking at them and coming up with some ideas. I've got a parts list with the amount that it's going to cost to build in draft format, and we should be able to get started here in the spring. And the way that I kind of like that to go is that there's some things that will need to be done by a professional contractor, but I'm hoping we can do some of this as a community and kind of put some efforts of ours into this project for Duncan's Crossing to make it more affordable so we can keep it nice. And then I think it'd be a good community building activity also. So stay tuned, we'll let you know more as we do. Any questions about Duncan's Crossing? No? Emergency cash container program. Again, we've kind of semi-launched it. This is the program to where people will be able to buy barrels, fill them up with things, and then we're going to store them in case of an emergency. It's mirrored off of a program that Cannon Beach and other communities have done. So we have just received in the hallway our first barrel. Christy's been working on the brochure, and it's pretty well done. Working on a memorandum of understanding so that we can have an agreement between people when they give us their barrels to store. And then we'll be able to fully launch it. People will be able to buy those barrels, and then we'll figure out a way to pick them up and store them for them, and they'll have access to them twice a year. So that's coming along pretty nice.
So is that a single stack or double stack when it goes in the comics?
We're gonna figure out a way to double stack it, and I'm looking at shelving options to do that, so that we don't just stack them on top of another. We learned a lot from some other communities about what went well and what didn't go very well.
So, and just to continue on that, how is the access available to the back of the comics? If if you've got double stacks and you're at the very back corner and you've got one in front of you and 30 in front of you and one to the side or 4 to the side, have you guys worked that out?
We found out how that went wrong for another community, and that's why I'm looking for some specific type shelving to be able to stack them without being on top of each other, and then also keep rows so that we can get back there. It's another reason that we also picked the 30 gallon size of container. It's much more easy for us to handle, and we can put more of them in there.
I see.
So yeah, we're working on that. That's what's taking a little bit of time. It's the last piece to really figure out.
And you're set on stacking on end instead of rolling in and out, so that you could easily dump the whole row and get to the back.
Maybe, I think I'm going more for the aisles.
Okay.
To make sure that we can get all the way to the back, over an aisle, and pull a barrel out if we need to.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and about your brochure, you got no plastic containers contaminable? Have you thought of no explosives and no weapons?
We've got a few restrictions on
We had
there.
very few restrictions when this sort of worked on.
Right.
But I think no gasoline was one of them.
Right. But so it would be acceptable to have,
A firearm in there?
yeah,
Yes.
okay.
At this point, yes.
All right, and my third question, or is it the fourth? On the brochure, you've got Summit and Ridge. A picture of Summit and Ridge, the street sign, and it makes me think that you've got a storage facility up there. Do I get to, is there one up there? Because I didn't realize there was.
No.
It's not, it's just a water tower? Okay, thank you.
We'll look at that. See about maybe making that change, if that's confusing.
We can always put one up there.
We looked at property up there, you know, what it would cost to have either an easement on a piece of property and that, and
I'll show you an easement on the road that you can just take down the sand and put a concrete base down and put 2 small connexes. I am absolutely sure you can fit them in there.
yeah, let's talk.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
And then moving on from that, we again have been funded for one of the grants. What was the grant amount for the supplies?
54,306.
54,306.
Been asked that.
We have got our shopping list put together and we'll begin purchasing some of those items and then storing them up there. And this is emergency water purification, foodstuffs, tarps, and that sort of thing that we'll be storing for the community for mass care. So that's another program that we've been working on. And then just today we were putting the final touches on Christy. She's an amazing grant writer, by the way. On another grant that she's writing for an additional $20,000 for other types of supplies for mass care. So we'll let you know how that goes when we get closer to it. The other grant that we received, the 140-some thousand from FEMA, the SCBAs are still being put together, so they're being manufactured, but we expect the delivery of them this month. So that's going all right. Fire station, I still haven't gotten final on the $25,000 grant from DLCD, but we've submitted everything now, and I think that they just need to sign off and get back to us. We're waiting for the holidays to get over to get that, and that money will be used for the design of the fire station once we get to that point. Specifically, the portion of the fire station that is the foundation, which is complicated. Which brings me to an update with the fire station. What we are waiting for is the final report on the geotech, and we're having somebody else take a look at that geotech report and then come up with a couple of designs for the foundation on a basic level so that we, city staff, can come to you with a final price for the building and be as accurate as possible. So we're waiting on that, and that should be coming here very soon, in the next 2 weeks. And then I will schedule with you an executive session between now and the next meeting, and we'll discuss those prices, and we'll also discuss some more information we have based on the property purchase from the Murphy family. So we'll put that program together, have the executive session, and then we'll be able to make some decisions after that.
So the fire station, the grant for the 25,000, that's really going to be used to follow a little bit farther down the road.
Yeah, depending on what we get from design from this gentleman who's working on it now, if it's accurate, then we're going to be able to use that $25,000 down the road. If he can't get it accurate because it's a complicated design, because we're doing a cut, it's critical infrastructure, there's a lot of requirements for critical infrastructure, then we would spend that between now and the vote to get even more information to find out how much we need to go for the bond. So trying to be as accurate as possible, but time is moving and time is money. So right now, that's where we're at. Organ Solutions, still working with them. We're almost a year in now. Just had on the December 12th, we had a meeting with the entire group to give status updates, and then day before yesterday, we had our subcommittee meeting here for the human side of the elk problem. We're looking at this as human behavior and elk behavior. I'm on the human side, and then there's a lot of professionals on the other side. We have come together with our ideas, where we've scored these ideas, and now we're starting to write the reports. And with that report, from those two subcommittees that come together, Organ Solutions will then come up with an agreement that the communities that are involved will sign, you, the council, saying, we're going to strive towards these things. to help lessen the impact. We should be done with that near March. So we'll have some things to do around there for Oregon Solutions. On that though, Bob McEwen wanted me to tell you today that he had an incident with some elk that came into his yard and they went after Poncho. And Bob was really rattled by it because he couldn't really get out and do anything. Poncho didn't have any injuries, but this female elk really kind of tried to run a number on him and was up on her hind and swatting at him. So he really wants us to continue working on this elk issue and hopefully we can come up with some solutions. So I spent the day with him today just kind of going over what we have done.
Wasn't there an incident this morning with an elk and a school bus in Cannon Beach?
I didn't hear it.
RJ might have heard.
I heard that there was a empty school bus hit an elk and the elk was stuck underneath the
Yeah, that's
bus.
what I heard.
Yeah. Poncho was fine.
I had the whole
Thank
herd
God.
in my yard and I couldn't help but not knock on my window a little bit, trying to get them to leave.
It worked, doesn't it?
You can talk to them, some of them will listen.
I didn't go
You can
outside.
talk,
Don't talk to the one that went after Poncho. She's not very happy.
she's not very happy.
So Bob's okay, Poncho's okay, but I did want me to let you know what had happened. So you were. Talk about that another time. At Grant. We're furthering the meter process. We're gonna have the crew come in and start installing meters en masse. I think they may start at the end of next week, and that will really get us caught up into more of those meters. And then we'll begin digital reading them after that, because everything else will be in place and is ready to go. So that's moving forward.
At what percentage of those meters then will be digital at that point in the city?
I think we're gonna be close to 70% at that point.
Big number.
Yeah. These guys are really, really good that come in and do it. They do it in a train, basically. That's what they do for their company. Of note, a work session, the next council work session is Tuesday, March 31st. We'll, on that agenda so far, will likely be a conversation about the C1 zone and some changes that the Planning Commission worked on. So again, that's the 5th Tuesday, March 31st at 6:30. And then between now and then, we may have something else to add on there, but I don't think so. I think we're gonna be able to concentrate on that. And, budget, so halfway through the year, things are looking pretty good. Our income is up about 50,000 and our expenses is down about 65. So that's working really well. And in talking about our revenue, our beginning fund balance this year was $249,000 from what we didn't spend last year to carry forward to start us in the year for the next year. And that's a record for Gearhart in regards to us saving those funds. So it's
So that's a budget surplus.
budget surplus is working really
After
well.
adding to your reserve funds,
About $75,000 into the reserve funds also. So we're saving money. My goal is to try to get that beginning fund balance up to about $500,000. I've been working on that for some time. And what that does is it's just a protected buffer for us to be able to operate. And if emergencies do come up, we'd be able to use it for that also. But it also helps fund at the beginning of our year. So I'm pretty pleased with the way that the budget is looking for the first 6 months. Any questions about that?
One question that I don't know that I've ever heard. Do we ever have to hold off paying our bills because we don't have money in the bank, or are we successful at always having money in the bank to pay the bills?
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
That's the cash carry forward.
Right, but I didn't know if there was ever a point in the year where we're a negative, or that we have to, like I said, hold off paying bills for waiting for something to come in.
No, not so far.
Okay, well, that's great.
Okay, that's what I have.
all right, good news. Any questions for Chad? Any other questions for?
Just one question on the water meters. It seemed like when I went over the budget piece that we haven't really spent any of the money that was budgeted, and that's because we haven't really done that project. The implementation of the, or,
We budgeted that money every year, and we usually spend it every year. We just haven't spent it yet. We've still got a surplus of meters sitting there in our storage container, and we're gonna use those coming up here soon, and then we're gonna reorder another bunch. We only have so much space to store them. So we will spend that money.
I have a question on the police report. Would I talk to you about that, or
I might know something about it.
what's the difference between theft one, theft two, and theft?
I might not know anything about that. As a matter of fact.
It's usually the value of the item that's stolen. So if it's over $1,000, it'd be theft one.
That one is the worst.
Yeah.
So when they say they did 542 security checks, what does that mean?
That's when they go around and they actually register stopping at a house, checking things out. Sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
They did that 542 times?
If an alarm goes off, they have to respond to it. So a lot of them are because either a neighbor saw something or the alarm went off.
Or they're just checking on things. They know a lot of the people who live around here, when they're around and when they're not. And some people call us and request an extra little checkup every once in a while. Being a residential community with 40% of the homes not being occupied.
And here's my, not last question, but when it says disturbances, what does that entail?
Could be all sorts of things. I'm not sure exactly how it categorizes it, but could just be an argument. It could be, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
could be noise.
Sure.
could be.
Could be an elk attacking a
Could be an
bunch of-
elk, all right, that's an elk disturbance. Okay, here's-
Dog barking.
Dog, okay. Total custody arrests, does that mean when they indicate that there was 4, they actually took somebody to jail?
This is when you get the fancy bracelets, yes.
So then they go to Seaside Jail or the county jail?
It depends. They could sit here for a period of time and then be released depending on the situation.
Here at City Hall?
Yeah.
They're handcuffed and they sit here?
Yeah.
Wow.
They can be handcuffed and sit in the car while
Yeah.
they write up a report and then they're released.
But we take all of
Under
our
observation.
prisoners, if you will, to Astoria.
They don't go to Seaside?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I just was always curious about what these things meant.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good questions. Any other questions for Chad? All right,
Okay.
thanks for the report.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have correspondence. Anyone have any questions or comments on the correspondence that we received?
I have one question. Is this the correspondence from the state for the restoration of the dune? Is that because of the windward plowing the dune about, 14 months ago? And they're now getting around to restoring it back to the way it was? Is that the whole purpose of that?
They've been plowing that dune for years and years, and their claim before was that it was to make sure that their septic system was accessible and working properly. State wanted to learn more information about it after looking at some satellite photos and noticed these cuts. And so on their investigation, they came back and learned that, well, the septic system isn't actually there. But they were claiming that they had to push the dunes back so that dune sand wasn't covering their septic system that was located closer to the building. It didn't quite sit well with the state, so the state's requiring them to refurnish, put that whole dune together again to where it was. Work with Tom Horning to kind of make that determination of where the dune is and replant it with vegetation and ensure that vegetation lives.
Okay.
Is there anybody on the city who's kind of, I don't want to say participating, but reviewing that or aware, are you?
Yeah, Ken Shonkweiler keeps me up to date, and he comes in and meets with me every once in a while to let me know what's going on. But that is in their jurisdiction entirely. So he's just kind of keeping us apprised.
Have you seen Tom's report or recommendations?
Any other comments or questions on correspondence?
Can we get the census thing somehow on the blog at some point?
Oh,
Says start putting out the word, flyers. There's a website you can go and grab a flyer. Put
Sure.
it at the post office,
We'll do that.
on the bulletin board.
I know they're looking for people to work and you're kind of have time available.
We need to have a conversation about that,
Uh-oh.
not now.
Okay. So next up, we have our 5-minute visitor section. And we just ask that folks that want to speak give their name and address for the record. I don't have anyone currently signed up on the sheet, but I'll take hands for anyone that would like to comment or say anything. All right. Okay.
I don't think that's happened in my city council.
2020.
It's gonna make this more interesting.
We do this on.
Well, small crowd tonight, but thank you all for being here. We don't have any ordinances or resolutions, no old business. New business, we're gonna table the discussion on the building fees, but we are gonna discuss the land use fees, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Sweet.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. So this has been a project that's been worked on for some time by city staff, primarily Cheryl and Carol. And I think Christie had something to do with it also, working on some numbers for them. What we're finding is we're going through of our fees, all of our fees within the city. This is going to be kind of the first go at this, but we're going to talk about building fees. We're also going to talk about some of the just basic city permit fees and things like that, because we haven't made any changes for almost 20 years to many of these things. And everything's getting a little bit more expensive, and to be good to the taxpayers, we want to make sure we're getting the appropriate fees into Deerhart to pay for these programs. So what they set to do was to, Cheryl started out by running some spreadsheets based on staff wages, including all benefits and all costs, ran through the process of what it takes for us to do these tasks, and came up with these worksheets. So I'm sorry there's no page numbers on that. My 2020 goal is to put page numbers more on these things for your packets for clarification. So we'll work on that. First, second, third page is the current resolution 869 that was done in 05, setting the fees for what we do is for planning now. The next page starts breaking down what it actually costs us to do these sorts of things based on that formulation that I was telling you now. That's why you get some goofy numbers with the 2 and then the 9 and the 3 rather than whole numbers. This is just raw data. So the first one is kind of a big deal. It's annexation. We don't do it very often. You look at the fee being $750, and then we put it through our system and kind of came up with that figure that, all right, if it was a big annexation and there was things to do with it, and we proposed an attorney's fee that may happen, we said, well, it could cost the city up to $5,700.
So that's like when the reserve got annexed in as part of that development.
Those sorts of things.
Right. So it's
Yes.
not a very common, but it's a big deal.
Correct. So we're not proposing to make the fee $5,700, but what we're going to be proposing when we come to you is that at least we're going to take into consideration all these costs except for the attorney's fees and come up with a good fee structure that will at least let us recoup most of our costs, if not all. And then we will also rely on verbiage that we have in the ordinance that I think you have near the end, but I'll read it to you. It's part of section 13.080. The filing fees established by the city council should not include the cost of preparing records for appeals. Fees for preparation should not exceed actual expenses incurred by the city during the process of technical evaluation of an application shall be borne by the applicant. So we will actually be keeping track of projects, and the fee, the basic fee of going through things will be set, and then any additional cost because it's a difficult situation, or we're not getting the information that we need, or we've had to do more work, or the attorneys had to get involved, will then be added on. So when we propose these fees to you for an annexation, back to that example, we'll come up with something that's probably going to be near the range of, let's say, $3,000 just to come in and to be annexed in. And then the verbiage that I just told you about to take care of all the additional costs will be there. One of the issues people have with doing business in Gearhart is it's very inexpensive to do business here compared to any other city. Especially in this county, but I would say most places. And we're spending taxpayer money to make up the difference. So we want to make these better, and we also want to be more transparent to the customer. One of the challenges we had in the narrative is that we're having challenges getting some of the fees done from the Palmberg process when we were talking about potential zone changes and things. They were surprised by the amount of time it took, but they had a very active real estate agent that took a lot of our time. And they were upset with the fees that we charged in addition to, and we're still working, negotiating that out. So we want people to have a good, clear understanding of what it's going to cost to do business in here. And we want to make sure that they're paying the lion's share of what it actually costs to do it. So any questions with the beginning here? And we can kind of go out with that? Yes, ma'am.
Well, as with our discussion on the building fees, the land use fees, will the city, the actual city, make any money? I know you're going to be giving a lot to the people that prepare all the documents, but will the city of Seaside retain any of the income? City of Gearhart. What did I say?
City of Seaside.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. You can tell where I was. I am so sorry. Will the city of Gearhart
It's
retain
not-
any of the fees?
I guess it's not a profit-making endeavor.
Right.
We want to make sure that the costs are covered for the city.
Is one way to look at it like you're not subsidizing, the taxpayers aren't subsidizing?
Oh, I
the cost of
understand that
something?
part.
Is
I
that-
think that's amenable.
So what it will do is if we get our appropriate fees from these endeavors, then we'll be able to better utilize money that went into paying for these things in other places.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, so that's annexation. We have some data on some other cities in the spreadsheet, but the ranges are anywhere between 1,000 and 3,500 for some of these other cities.
So can I just ask one or two questions on this
Yes, sir.
annexation? On line 4, determined need for PC input is $602. I mean, that's just determining if the planning commission needs it. And then the next line goes, council sets hearing and date. Does that mean the notifications cost $602, or the council goes, yes, we're gonna have a hearing and we're gonna do it on the 12th, $602? I'm questioning because, you know, it jumps out at me right off the bat that if we're estimating, it should be maybe a little clearer or a little more concise estimate, because to me, those two things right there, that's $1,200 could be done for, I don't know, if it's mailings, I'm sure it's $300 for a mailing.
Well, I would assume that the cost to staff is what we're talking about.
Yeah, some of the things that you came up with, and that's a good point, it's a good question, because I had the same one about 602. And we took a look at a lot of the worst case scenarios about what a process would mean in staff time. And that's what it takes. I mean, the packets and things that we do, the reports that we put together, they take a lot of time.
Right.
So I'll get some, I'll maybe look at a better way to clarify that and put staff time in there.
It's just a
approximation.
determined need for PC input.
Yeah.
That's basically, is this a land use issue? It goes to the planning commission.
No, not
We
necessarily.
could hope that it was
Because
that.
the planner can determine whether the planner can solve this or whether the planning commission needs to be involved, and so that
Yeah.
takes
So
billable hours from
it's,
the planning. from the
it's
planning.
taking the planner's wages and then also,
Correct.
thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the planner or other city staff member need to make a variety of determinations under state law. And it's all about the city's ability to provide urban services to that parcel. So if some are really easy. I mean, there might be like an island of land that's surrounded by the city. There are all the pipes in the road. There's something like that. There's things called a cherry stem annexation where it might not be directly adjacent, but might be allowed under state law depending on a variety of factors. And so some annexations, it would take a couple of minutes because they know that our police can serve it, that we have water there that can be tapped into, all that. Others might be more complicated and would require the planner or administrator to make all those recommendations that could eventually be made by either the planning commission or the city council.
Yeah, okay.
And that is for going to the planning commission also. So staff going prepared if we need to get their input. So that's auxiliary. So if we didn't need their input, that wouldn't be part of the fee.
So are you proposing that this is like taking your car in for service, this is an estimate of what one would expect to go through this process and you will be billed based on what actually happens?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we can give them a menu of what some of those approximate costs are. And that's why I want to, again, be clear on this, that we're not looking at bringing our fees up to the 5,700 at this point. It's going to be something between 5,700 and probably 3,000.
But will it be presented as a range or will it be presented, it will?
Yeah. Here's what happens if it goes well, or here's what happens if we have to take the long road to ground.
And I would guess that's what other cities do as well.
Mhm.
And so, like, the good example was the Palmer property. When all of that was added together, even though our fees are already a lot lower than other cities in the area, they saw how much some of these billable hours actually are, and I would guess for Carroll, was they probably didn't realize how much time staff had to go through a lot of that stuff, and so they were like, whoa, I didn't realize how much that cost.
Yeah, and during the process, they changed their plans quite a few times. We had multiple meetings with them.
But the fee was really low, right?
Yeah, it was like
500
500.
bucks.
Well, that's the other problem is that even though they know that if we exceed the fee because of staff time, they're responsible for it, when you say the fee's $750, they're mentally thinking $750, and then if it costs $3,200 and they get a bill for $3,200, that's just, I mean, it's more than 4 times what their expectations were going in. So part of this is, I mean, hopefully there won't be any attorney's fees for an annexation because hopefully I won't need to be involved in it. But it's just letting them know that this is kind of the menu of options and it could be, I mean, $750 really under any circumstances isn't going to be a realistic number. And so it's starting them with the range that's more realistic and ending with the range that's hopefully worst case scenario.
Okay.
And we have a policy also that if we stop and they change their mind and we no longer incur, we can even refund them a portion of what they've paid for us because we want to charge them for what they've actually cost the city.
Would you ever have a case where, so let's say our city planner, you're thinking will incur so much time and you do your estimate, will you give them what we're paying her hourly so that they get an idea of if she's working on this for 15 hours, this is kind of the range that.
I don't mind at all, you know, people need to understand, you know, what it costs.
You're just trying to make it as clear for them as possible
Yes.
upfront.
Mm-hmm. And
So there's different ways.
and with Carol, it's easy. She is a contractor with us. She's not an employee of the city of Gearhart. We pay her an hourly rate of $75 for that service. It's a great deal for the city because we don't need a full-time planner yet. Feels like sometimes I would like to have one, but it works out pretty well. So there is cost. And then when you take, my salary and you add on healthcare and all of that, it gets expensive.
Yeah, I mean, if she's 10 hours into a project, that's $750.
And that's reasonable. A 75 an hour.
Yeah, 75 is very low for contract planners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you hire an expert to come represent you, it costs far more than that.
And we'll be doing a little bit of that for the Parks Master Planning, a little bit of that to help us through some of that. But that's what the grant money is for.
The only thing that I would consider not having on here would be if Cheryl is, say, here every Thursday afternoon to do whatever work needs to be done on Thursday afternoons, if that includes some small piece of a project like this, but she's here anyway, she's getting paid anyway. I don't know, there's this part of, well, that's just staff time. Staff is here to do all these tasks. Anyway, that's what we're paying them for.
Like those times when you call an attorney for just 10 minutes, but then you get the bill. Yeah, I mean, our attorney's really good at this, but
At charges?
yes. So,
You guys haven't had a large legal bill, and I'm not going to finish it.
I have a feeling that we're gonna have another rate conversation. Yeah, we don't nickel and dime, and we don't keep it. It's project based,
Yeah.
so it's based on the whole project. And there's all sorts of things that are getting more expensive. The mail outs are way more expensive these days, and the paper. And
It's just packets, those thick packets.
The amount of notice that this state's every time they revisit the notice for adjacent landowners, it seems like the amount of information that's necessary gets, the scope gets broader, and the distance of the people that are impacted that you have to mail it out to gets larger as well. So I don't see those.
if it was a
fees going down.
golf course issue, it would be 250 homes we'd have to mail out to. For notice and that sort of thing.
So, Paulina, what I believe what you were asking is really, should this be spread upon the entire populace of Gerhard or the entire taxpayers of Gerhard? Or should the burden be put on the person that's actually using the service? That's really the debate.
I mean, I think most of it probably does belong to the person who's requiring the service. The only critical thing I would look through here and go, well, Cheryl's here, she's doing land use work for us anyway, she's doing planning work. Is anything on these lists kind of within the scope of what she'd be doing on a day-to-day basis anyway?
You just want to make sure it's
That's-
balanced and fair.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Which I'm sure we're all thinking.
And another point of clarification, I'm sorry that, this is a light agenda with the holidays and all that, so that's why we kind of added this on. I'm treating this a little bit like a work session because we're not making any decisions tonight on this. Warming you up to the idea, we're going to clarify a few of these things and then bring it back next month. And we've got time. We're not on a specific timeline necessarily with this. We would like to get done this soon.
Well, I just want to say a few things. That first of all, I think one of the most striking things is to look at the last page, which is a comparison of all the other, some other nearby communities and other communities, and I would guess it's pretty similar with the building fees as well, but we'll take a look at that later. But it seems to make sense to at least try to get into the same range as other communities, and there's a couple obvious reasons for that. First of all, the way that you've mapped it out by showing what it's actually costing the city makes a ton of sense. But if you also look at it in relation to what other cities' fees are, then it really kind of shows like, whoa, we should have kind of looked at this a while ago. And so I don't see a lot of downside to the way that you said it, Dan, is that you're either burdening it on the taxpayers or burning on the person that's trying to make money off the development, or whatever it is.
That's making the request.
Making the request, yeah, and I agree 100%. I mean, I think there's really no downside to adjusting those fees, and I think that, and obviously we'll get some more back and forth on it, but just the way that you mapped it out, I'm like, hey, this is a pretty good estimate. You know, there might be some things we need to tweak, but a pretty good estimate of what it really costs the city. So yeah, I don't see a lot of downside to adjusting.
Well, and thanks for the compliment, but again, just to be clear, it was mostly Carol and Cheryl's work.
Right.
Yeah, I get to be the one with the razzle-dazzle portion of this, but they did a lot of work along
Well,
with this.
I assume that took a lot of time to come up with those, so tell them thank you.
The only real concern I had is the next page, which would be an appeal. And I have no problem charging for the appeal if they're denied. But if somebody's appealing, it's like a planning commission decision, and we overturn it, I have a hard time charging them then. So to me, it's kind of like a frivolous lawsuit. If you bring a lawsuit and you lose, you pay the bill, but if
you win.
yeah, you should be compensated, you shouldn't have to pay them those fees, in my
It's a good idea.
opinion.
I mean, the only question would be,
They rarely win, but to me, if you know, we can have something go awry at the planning commission that gets appealed to us, or I guess even, there's the question then, if it's us that makes a mistake and it goes to LUBA, you know, I guess.
and then the only other way to look at it would be, even if it is appealed and they win, it still does cost the city money, right? It's staff.
It does. I do agree with you, though. I think that appeals should be accessible. So if somebody was making a decision on whether or not to appeal something that they think the city did wrong, I looked at this and you know, immediately I said, okay, that's way too much, because we don't want to prevent people from going through the process. So we're going to look at that real seriously and come up with something that's fair, that'll get us through it. But then we can always add on if we need to, because of the technical side of things. And I think that the council could, even though that they resolve to do something, they can instruct the staff to return a portion if you feel, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, some of these are hard costs, like mailing notice, but you as a council in your discretion certainly can do that. And again, the whole purpose, and I think people have mentioned that, you know, that these fees are very restricted in how they can be spent. The reason is the whole idea for this is that the city not be burdened, but that the person not have to pay more than the costs that were incurred. And if another jurisdiction who's very frustrated that they weren't getting more affordable units, asked me with, why is housing not affordable? And you know what I found as a result of my research, which wasn't satisfying to them, is really the only two variables are land acquisition cost and then the system development charges and permit fees. So the cost of building per square foot, it can vary a little bit depending on the type of finishes, but really the only way to get the more affordable units is by having the less expensive dirt and the less expensive fees. So the reason I say that is I always caution jurisdictions, you know, there's that fine line between making sure that the city's, you know, being covered and making sure that other taxpayers aren't paying for the development, but also that every dollar that we're adding on, it's going to make, you know, the end purchaser is going to be the one that's going to pay it. So just, you know, just making sure we're as accurate as possible and we're as fair as possible as we go through this.
Quick question on the appeals process. If something does go to LUBA, can LUBA rule to refund any fees?
Yeah, LUBA actually has, in many instances, prevailing party It's tough for a jurisdiction to get prevailing party fees, but it's easier for an individual.
A LUBA appeal costs like $200.
Well, the fee costs $200, but
Attorney's fee.
all the time. Well, I think to our vacation rental, and the record was 3,000 pages, and just assembling that was.
Then to file that appeal is like $200.
Yeah, but the cost of the appeal is.
We paid more. You paid more.
Well, I'm sure they paid a lot.
I have a feeling that they
They brought-
substantially more than we did.
They brought 2 attorneys, I just brought him. Knocked it out of the ballpark. That was a pretty proud moment.
We did not get prevailing party fees, however.
When you're adding page numbers, maybe you could put draft on these too, since these do get posted and stuff. Is it really, I mean, it doesn't say Gerhard here anywhere, but
Yeah, sometimes I have a tendency to get people excited before they.
Stamp those.
And if you're doing that, and you're posting these, maybe you could drop the proposed fee line, and you could just put total costs. Because for me, when I saw proposed fee, I immediately went, well, these guys want to charge this much, and it just,
it's just the wording.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's for us simple people that just go, oh, proposed fee?
Yeah, I have a tendency of, I'm in it, I'm working it, I know exactly what it means,
Mhm.
and then forget.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea.
Okay, so I think we are where we are. We can go over this page by page if you want to, but I think it's a good primer.
I think the comparison sheet says it all for me. I mean, it was very informative and kind of raised my eyebrows.
So the
How
team,
how little we charge.
it across the board for
Yeah.
everything that we do, including police reports and everything.
Yeah.
It's just something that we've enjoyed being the little town, but now it's starting to cost us.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not like we're going to hopefully be the highest ever, but, one, we're just kind of in line with what it actually costs us. I mean, that is huge and very responsible.
You had, jumping around a little bit, the building code issue, you had some experience with Gerhart and other cities.
Oh, yes.
And where do you think that, I know, I'm pretty sure I've got a pretty good idea, but what's the difference?
Why? So in 2015, I built a $600,000 house in Manzini. And I had to write a $24,000 some odd dollar check for my permit pack. So that was system development fees.
There are jurisdictions that are over $50,000 for a single family house.
And what would that same cost here?
7 or 8.
So a third of what? And Manzini is same size as your, right? Same.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, same amount of
They
housing
have,
units.
I'm gonna guess, at least in City Hall, they have more than double the staff we do.
They get a lot more revenue from short-term rentals because they have.
And fees.
And fees, very large amount of short-term rentals in Manzini.
The way I'm looking at this is just purely on efficiency. I'm a small government guy, I always have been, because of what he said in regards to the housing crisis. Government's not gonna solve it, we'll just add fees. But, so I'll take a really good look at this and make sure that we at least get what it is that we're gonna spend. Okay?
Discussion.
So
Thank you.
will that come back as old business?
Or we could have a work session.
I think that we just did to get me started. I think with what we said, I'm feeling pretty comfortable that I can propose some fees and come to the next meeting and potentially do a resolution to adopt them. If you agree, and if you don't, then we'll take another stab at it.
And we can make minor changes and still do a resolution.
Yep.
Yep, okay. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Just for clarification, so the actionable piece would be next month, potentially?
That's our intention.
As well as a discussion on, deeper discussion on the building fee part of it, which will be separate.
Yep.
Okay.
But I'll make it similar so that we can look at it that way too.
Yeah, that comparison our city to city building.
Yeah, that's
Really,
awesome.
yeah, gets you thinking.
Okay, that's all that I have on that, thank you.
Well, thank you. That was very great. Okay. Next up, we have council concerns. We'll start with Councilor Cochran.
Well, this isn't a concern, but I just have a question.
I
I
was gonna, yeah, but I should have done that.
Do we have a 3-minute, does anybody want to speak, question?
We did not
Okay.
ask for that to begin.
Okay.
Oh, it's a new year.
Afraid to say
Go ahead, Councilor
anything.
Bauer. Yes.
Oh, my goodness. This is for Chad, what was the final resolution of, remember a couple times ago when the new residents came and they had a huge water bill, like in the thousands? And we kind of had a discussion, what was the final resolution on that?
Still working on that a little bit.
Okay.
Going back and forth with them. They weren't so happy with our fix. They felt like it was the previous owner, which kind of
Mhm.
was. So I'm looking at putting together another report so that I can get that information to you again.
That would be what?
I feel better, I think I would feel better with a larger discount. So that's coming again.
So there's no way that we could just say, it's not your fault, we're not charging you that?
We could.
But then we eat it.
Well, we're raising our fees. I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
our water fees are going up, are they? Well, tell me about
Well,
that.
I don't know. Mine didn't go up. Did yours?
Yeah.
I know. No, I'm sorry, I'm done. I didn't mean to.
Well, and I thought that was, it's a good point in when that came up. Dan, you guys got together to find what it really does cost.
And it was pretty much what they were billed.
Yeah, and so, that is something to take into account, but
What?
I think ultimately.
Chad during the meeting said it only cost 6.
Yeah, he was incorrect.
You, on record, you said it was 6.
Glad we brought this up.
I am so glad I.
This is really,
It was a
you
good
might have been wrong,
conversation.
but it was really educational.
Yeah.
But what it really does cost the city.
I
Similar to these permit fees.
I was familiar with, I was using data from our own water system and how we do that. But the time period for this was during a time where we were also buying water from Warrington, which is more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed to calculate it that way also.
So
It's just simple
if
math.
we required surplus water, then anything over what they would normally use would have been the surplus, and so it would have been the Warrington water.
Yeah.
And that cost virtually what they were billed.
But it does get, actually it's a little less because we were mixing our water in there. And I didn't know how to calculate that in,
The
so.
problem is, we would have bought less water if they had used less water, bottom line. So it really did, because they used that much water, we bought that block of water from Warrington. Whether they drank Seaside or Gearhart water or Warrington water really doesn't matter.
Turns out supply side economics.
Yes, I mean,
And the problem was nobody was drinking the water. I mean, nobody was at the house. That's why the leak was going on.
well, that's correct, but
And
it's
it was-
back to that, should our taxpayers be burdened with that?
Right.
That's the.
And it was between a sale also.
So that might come back to us.
Yeah.
Again, well, I think we have more information to make a ruling.
Yeah.
Is that what we call it? A ruling?
Sure, or decision, yeah.
Decision. A ruling?
And someone else got a hold of me about another water bill issue. So
Yeah.
we have another one coming.
We've had a few of them.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out.
The new meters are shocking some people. That's another thing.
Because they're accurate.
I have nothing else.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Jesse.
I have nothing.
No.
Counselor Cochran.
How do you know if you have a new meter? Is it
When
obvious?
when you open it up, it'll have a blue cap and a yellow antenna.
Oh, yellow.
Sticking out of the ground?
No, in the box. And so we'll go from manual reads to digital reads, whereas the truck will just drive by and pick it up.
Does the cover get changed?
No.
It's still gonna
Oh.
be steel?
No, the cover gets changed.
Yeah, okay.
To what?
From steel or brass To, oh, you mean the cover to the ground itself?
Yes,
No.
on the box, you know, there's the little one, then there's the fiberglass one.
If it's broken, they'll change it.
No?
You're asking if the metal one will be there if it's.
Right,
it's
if
a
you
new
got an
one.
antenna, wouldn't the middle one block the signal? Okay, thank you.
No.
Just curious.
Yeah.
So are the meter readers charging us less since they just get to drive by?
They're not gonna be doing anything for us moving in the future. We're gonna have this computer and an antenna in a public works utility truck. We could even put it in a police vehicle, and over a period of time, they would hit all of them. We don't have to go down every street.
That's amazing.
Cross training.
So it's saving us a lot of money then with
Yeah.
the.
Yeah, that'll save us some money,
Thank you.
for sure. And it'll also help our billing issues with people misreading and things. And it will also help us be more conservative in that the meter will actually tell the truck if it's been running for a period of time.
Awesome.
In some towns, they have meters that will call the hydrant, and the hydrant will call City Hall.
Yeah, that's what I like. It's something that's gonna alarm when these things are going on.
Okay, I don't have any concerns. So,
Motion to adjourn.
okay, we hear a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned.